Bells and whistles, smoke. Congratulations for showing up. You guys are pretty much the 1% of people, okay, that are interested in proactive conscious creation. The rest of the people are just doing it by default. Are you aware of that? Yeah. The reason I've chosen this point in time is because basically it's normally the third week in January when everyone gives up on their New Year's resolutions and pretty much goes back to their default programming, which they've been pretty much practicing. So we all enter the new year, yes, new energy, New Year's resolutions, and we all try and take on a whole bunch of stuff. Pretty much now in the third week of January into the year, pretty much they ebb away, and that the flow just loses momentum, and we go back to what we did, and then a whole year goes by, and then the next year it's like, no, this year we're going to do it. So that's the one thing why this time is important. The other reason it's important is basically the full moon, which is very much there's a little blue book at the back there, which is a diary which I got as a gift. So if anyone wants to go and have a look, I think it's the new moon in full moon in Cancer.
Yes.
Which is my start, by the way. And so if anyone wants to read up on about it, you can. So it's very good for releasing. And anytime there is a release, obviously if something moves away, the universe can't do with vacuum. Something has to rush in to fill it. So now we're going to be conscious about filling it with something that we set an intention to. So we're going to be diving into that. So that's brilliant. So we've ascertained that the minority of, it's a very small minority of people that are actually looking at doing conscious creating. We're basically creating everything all the time, but not always consciously. It's always pretty much stuff that we've learned. All right, so before we start, I'd like for us to do the little priming soul principle, and that's just to ground us a little bit. Can you accept that you are a powerful, creative, compassionate, infinite, loving spirit? Okay, subjectively we can get that. Yes, yes, yes. But are our thoughts and our actions and our words living up to that? Not always. So we'll find often the problem is why we get that, the concept behind that. How much of a distance is there between what we're doing and that concept of what we really are, the bigger part of ourselves? So if you are a person that is maybe a little bit overwhelmed and think, well, I have no bloody idea what intention to make. I'm overwhelmed and then just make that your intention. My intention for now, if you can't think of anything else, but we will get into it, then make your intention is basically reconnect with your soul and close that distance. So everybody's here because we're all wanting change. Okay, just what change we know is inevitable. Everything is subject to change, but we were wanting to look at having some form of control freaks. We're wanting to try and control the change that is happening around us. And I want us just to surrender that for one moment, because we cannot control, we couldn't master every single one of our manifestations. Okay, I think that happens in the absolute, but we do have to have, in order for us to know what we want, we have to know what we don't want, and that's when we get our contrast. So the contrast is going to happen, and I believe that there's a bigger part of us that sees a much bigger picture. So when the proverbial does hit the fan, like it often does, for us just to be able to see it for what it is. This is contrast to help me find my intention, for me to find more clarity on my intention. And then from there, we then project from what it is, so that we can actually have some form of control of what we actually are wanting to manifest, and that's where the fun comes in. So we know that change is inevitable. We know we can't control it all the time, but we do know that we do have powerful intent that can affect it in very, very positive ways, and that's what we're wanting to do here today. Instead of being reactive and creating by default, we're looking at being conscious with our creation. So now, I've got a couple of examples. If you're looking at the power of intention, it's like we all understand that as a concept as well, but I'd like to give a couple of examples, 2 examples of the power of intention as it was displayed, practice, and evidence of it. So we're going to look at harnessing this power of intention. Let's have a look at examples. So here's the one example. It's really cool, and I use this story often. And there was 2 groups of scientists. And the one group of scientists said their intention was to prove that light was a particle. That's what they wanted to set out to prove. The other group of scientists, they wanted to prove that light is a wave. So here's the interesting thing. The group of scientists that set out to prove light is a particle found evidence that it's a particle and proved light is a particle. The group of scientists that said light is a wave found evidence to support them and that light is a wave. So that's interesting. It can be used in so many other ways. I was telling Toby, when it comes to like religion, everyone's trying to decipher light in different religions, and everyone says, look, no, it's a particle. And here's my evidence to prove it. Whereas another religion would say, no, it's a wave. I'm right, you're wrong. No, I'm right, you're wrong. And one of the most dangerous things you could ever say is, I'm right and you're wrong. Everything's always evolving. Even truth itself grows. We see bigger versions of it as we go. At the end of the day, it's all light. Still light. And there's a fly here. It's buzzing around my head. Okay, cool. So that's one example. The other example is another guy I love who I follow, and his name is Dr. Joe Dispenza. Has anyone heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza? Okay, you haven't heard of him. I think you're in for a treat. I always refer to the dispensary of Dr. Joe Dispenza. This guy, I watched like nearly a 2-hour it was on YouTube, and he was speaking to a crowd of people in Mexico City. And there he was, walking up and down the stage, and just a lot of what he said resonated with me. So I dived in, and I'm absorbing all of this. But it wasn't until the end of the Q&A, the questions and answers, when he was asked, so where did all this begin? What was the catalyst that got you into this? And then he told his story. So his story was he was kind of into the fitness, and he was doing triathlons. So he was on the bicycle ride part of the triathlon. And he was obviously a mover shaker because he was branching out to overtake a group of cyclists. And unfortunately, he was hit by a truck. Badly. In a way so much that 6 of his vertebrae were kind of crushed. So he kind of came to now in a hospital bed, and the doctors all around him saying, this is what happened, sorry for you, get used to being in a wheelchair for the rest of your life, and you'll never ever walk again. So he looked at these guys, and they looked at him, and he said, guys, I can't explain why, but there's more to this, and I can't accept it. So the doctors looked at each other and said, okay, add to our second opinion, I think he's got cussed and he has some brain damage because he's talking like a lunatic. And he stuck to that. So he had nothing else to do. He was bedridden. So he sat basically for the first 6 weeks. All he did was refine his meditation. His meditation was, and he explained this in his speech, that in our brain and in our nervous tissue, we have neurons. And the neurons are, the science behind that is, the neurons, if you have an idea or if you learn something new, they're basically cells that fire together, wire together. They actually grab like that. And if it's something on high on your set of values, or something that you keep on seeking out or you look for, you create more. And then the more that happens, it actually has an insulation sheath called the myelin sheath that covers it. And these become like highways in our brains, which is why a lot of our learned behaviors that we've cemented and myelinated become these like highways, and that's so difficult to get out of an old habit because we continually thinking it because it just comes up automatically. So he just worked on doing the meditation and just seeing his spinal column. And it was a three-hour process that he would go through. And obviously in the beginning, because we can only focus for about 7 seconds before squirrel, before we get sidetracked, it took him quite a while till he was able to do it to the full 3 hours. Within 6 weeks, he started to get feeling back in his lungs. And within 8 weeks, he was starting with occupational therapy. And here I am watching him on YouTube straight up and down the stage, walking. So his message was, you're crazy when you think it's possible to everybody else, because it's what everyone else thinks is impossible. But you're a miracle when you achieve it. So he's now does this. He's now got the school, and he has a lot of followers. And the other example another example of power of intention was, he had a whole bunch of test subjects suffering from depression. He prescribed a placebo. Placebo is a salt solution, saline solution. They were given this, which is basically benign. It's benevolent. It does nothing. There's no medical. So, and 81% of the people in that group of depression were cured. That's pretty interesting. So then let's just kind of think about how effective are flu shots, perhaps. He even says that to the people. Dr. Joe Dispenza even says that. So for him, this is just brain candy for me. I've watched that probably about 5 or 6 times. I've rewatched that 2 hours. Yes, I'm quite obsessed. Okay, cool. So what is kind of the premise behind this? There's a guy by the name of Robert Anton Wilson, and he came up with a quote that is very, very powerful. And the quote goes along the lines of, what the thinker thinks, the prover proves. What the thinker thinks, the prover proves. Group of scientists, light is a particle. Thinker thinks, prover proves. Other group, light is a wave. Thinker thinks, prover proves. That is now about harnessing the power of intention. The thing is you've got, the trick is, we'll get there. I want to jump the gun. Okay, other interesting thing I found out about the word intention, there's 2 spellings for it. So when I checked this out on the internet, there's 2 spellings. The one spelling for intention, spelled with an S, intention. A lot of us are in the state of tension, intention. But the meaning for intention was the internal content of a concept. And that just resonated with me. The internal content of a concept. So it's looking within. Cool. The other spelling for intention is with the T. And the meaning there was basically just your aim and your plan. And I thought both of these meanings have relevance. Your aim and plan is your vision, your mission, your purpose. When the internal content, the internal processes. We've ascertained proof of the power of intention. We've seen examples. So we're now going to look at what affects our intention. Let's dig into and say, well, actually, what causes then, what the thinker thinks the prover proves, what is there anything behind it? What affects it? And it's basically your stories and your beliefs. Okay, your stories and your beliefs, it's what you keep telling yourself over and over. So your belief is, we all know about the placebo. If I believe that I'm getting the right medicine for me, then, and I believe it vehemently, my body just then, as Dr. Joe Dispenza says, just creates the chemistry all by itself. And I get the result that I expected, even if it's just a salt solution or a sugar pill. So the story and your beliefs are critical. So are you saying to yourself sometimes, I can't? It's impossible. Are you saying it's highly improbable? Are you saying perhaps it's possible? Or are you saying it's highly probable? Your story that you keep telling yourself and the beliefs behind it. So we talk of beliefs. Let's dig behind what's behind a belief. Do you know that the way they define the word belief is this? They just say it's a thought on repeat until it is accepted as certainty and truth. A thought on repeat until it is accepted as certainty and truth. So you just keep telling yourself this thought over and over and over again until it becomes certainty and truth. And if you have enough of those attachments happening, then what happens is you then have the highways built, and then the thought starts to come automatically. It's like when you first learn to drive a car, you had to refocus. Clutch in, into gear. You press petrol, slowly release the clutch, let it go, let it go, let it go. Okay, we've got forward momentum, release the clutch, slowly petrol, okay. You had to really consciously think of everything. Now you get in your car and you go. It's all there. The body now knows it automatically. So a lot of our thoughts are just automatic responses that just come flickering up, and that's why a lot of our default reactive nature comes from it. That's why we often spend the same stagnant loop. Sometimes the past 2 years have been a bit of a downward spiral, but I think we actively engage this, we can actually get it to becoming an ascending loop. Let's look at how we can put this into practice. So there's 5 steps. So let's look now at the 5 steps to harness the power of intention.
The Big Cigar.